Okay, so as you can see on my screen, this is the agenda for today. We're gonna have the presentations in addition to that mock interview exercise. The homework for next week is as follows. You will have obviously the opportunity to continue your customer discovery exercise, conduct 3 or more customer discovery interviews. For next week, you have to have a presentation deck with 4 slides. The business thesis updated based on the feedback that you received from your mentors. The weekly interview summary, where you summarize the findings of your customer discovery interviews. You're gonna add a new slide, the market size, and also update the 4th slide, which is the 2-panel business model canvas. You will be able to find a template already in Basecamp, so please revisit it. It's titled PPT Template for Week 3. Please meet with your mentors so you can discuss the feedback that you received tonight, but also discuss your findings of the customer discovery interviews and watch the market size video. And I guess I'll pass it back to you, Jay, unless you want us to go over the breakout rooms right now.
Why don't we show it? At least that's a good idea.
Okay.
And, so we will be assigning you to these rooms. So you don't really need to do anything other than go to the room where you are assigned. And most of the teams on this list are presenting. There's a couple of them that don't have interview data. And so the person who's monitoring the room may not know that you don't have interview data, but your mentor will. So those people will not present tonight. So only the teams that have interviews will be done. And so we have 4 breakout rooms, and you'll go to one of those, and you'll get to hear feedback on your presentation from the mentors. And again, a reminder to the mentors that when your team is presenting, to allow the other mentors to comment instead of you, because you have the rest of the week to make your comments with them. But when the other teams are presenting, we would like all of the mentors to contribute. And again, we're focusing on the essentials at the beginning, a single customer segment, the value propositions from the point of view of the customer, and a coherent business thesis. And then, of course, the interviews, which are the main portion and what people are learning and insights gained. Thank you, Francis, for that.
Okay, before we move forward, for my sake, do me a favor. Rename yourselves in here in Zoom. As you probably see in your, in your name over there in Zoom, click on the 3 dots and rename yourselves. Put your name and also put the name of the team that you're associated with. If you're associated with more than one team, put both of them, so that way I can assign you to the right breakout room. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any questions or hands raised, so let's begin with a quick introduction so he has more time to talk, and that's Professor Will Grover. He's an associate professor in bioengineering at UC Riverside. He is the lead person at the Grover Lab at UC Riverside, and he is one of our most impressive graduates of INNOVAR. He's taken our program multiple times and had multiple spin-outs from the university. So he's a great faculty / entrepreneur, and UC Riverside is really grateful to have him. And so without further ado, Will, would you share a few words of your wisdom on how you go about doing what you do with startups?
Happy to, Jay. Well, thanks for the invitation. Here, let me first see if I can get the screen sharing going. So there's that. And then this. Okay, hopefully that is showing through okay for everybody?
Correct.
Good, thank you. Thanks for the confirmation. All right, 1, window moved around, and I'm good. All right, and so actually, I'm here as well with Professor Samantha Ying, who will speak a few words too here about our most recent sort of experience with a project that we completed the INNOVAR program for just last year, and so she'll share a few specific things that we learned and found interesting from that experience. But yeah, I thought I would just try to show y'all over a couple slides just sort of what stuck out to me over having gone through this program and some of its ancestor programs a number of times. You know, when I log into Basecamp, I see evidence of all of the various projects and teams and things I've been part of through this curriculum over the years. And you know, clearly I've enjoyed it and gotten something out of it because I keep coming back for more. And but every time I do it, I learn something else. And so over a couple slides, I'll try to highlight a few things that have really stuck out to me as particularly valuable things from this curriculum, and a few tips for how to make most advantage of that value, especially focusing on those interviews that you're trying to do, the customer discovery part of this. So that's why I call myself an INNOVAR repeat offender. I've been here, I keep showing up over and over. But mostly I'm here because in the past, we formed a company that I'm advisory board chair for that does some chemical analysis hardware called Match Sample Corporation. And like I said, with Sam Ying, I'm the technology lead on the development of the Otter sampler, which we'll say a couple words about here in a minute. But first, okay, so two slides. The first one here is aimed at folks like myself that are in the crowd, and I saw the participants. I know there's folks that this applies to for sure present here tonight. This is a slide of specific advice aimed at the scientists, the engineers, the inventors that are in the crowd, and so these I aspire to be those things myself. And so these were some things I learned from this process that I want to call your attention to, that hopefully you guys will find valuable from this process. So first, this program, INNOVAR, forces us to put down our hammers for a while and focus on the nails, okay? And I love that. I think we don't get a lot of opportunities in our day jobs to do that as scientists and engineers and things. And it's important because I don't know how your workflow is. I find that as an engineer, I'm a hammer maker, okay? I love making hammers, new hammers for everything. And you know the adage, once you have a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And that's okay, but if you're not careful, you run the risk, as the little picture here shows, of I'm hitting every problem I can with my hammer, with my skill sets, with the areas of expertise that I have and I enjoy. But if I take a step back and look at what I thought was a nail, I might realize that this is not the right tool for this particular problem. And so, you know, we don't, though, get a lot of time to catch our breath in our day jobs and make that realization. And so the INNOVAR program for us, a particular valuable aspect of it is this is forcing us through customer discovery, through these interviews, to really put down the hammers and focus on the nails and learn as much as we can from the nails before we pick up our hammers or try to design and invent the next hammer. I think that's an opportunity and it's a valuable thing. So I think when you're doing the customer discovery, if you find that your proposed solution solves the customer's problems that you had in mind when you developed that solution, that's great. You won. You now have a clear, confident path toward hopefully commercializing that solution into something that is a viable, sustainable product or service or something like that. That's great. That's what we're hoping for, and that's the outcome. However, if you do the customer discovery in the interview process and you find that your proposed solution doesn't solve your customer's problems, that's actually great too. That's valuable information. That's information you would have never had without going through that customer discovery interview process. So in the context of INNOVAR, you'll pivot and you'll describe the different perspective. We've identified a different problem that we can go after, and here's our new proposed solution, you know, for going after it. But for us as scientists and researchers and engineers and things in the university or elsewhere, this is a great opportunity for us too, right? You've just discovered your next research topic, right? So because you know now that there's a need for a specific solution to a problem out there in the real world, outside of the university or outside of wherever, and you're the person that has that information, and so you are well equipped to now develop the next solution for that. And you know that once you do develop that, there's going to be a need waiting to receive that solution, right? That's good too. So don't worry if in your customer discovery you find that what you've created doesn't quite match what the needs are. Focus on what the needs are, and then you will invent a solution to that, and it'll be good. So This program is the scientific method that we all learned about back in school, right? Make a hypothesis, perform an experiment, collect data, revise your hypothesis. This is the scientific method applied to entrepreneurship, which I think is a, for us, again, for us scientists and engineers in the crowd, that's a cool perspective on it. It shows the value of this program. Right? We make a business hypothesis. We think there's a market and a need for this whatever that I've come up with, right? But again, you're a scientist. You would not just take that for granted without evidence, right? We were taught not to do that kind of thing. And that's exactly what this program aims to do. You have your hypothesis, right? I think I have a business in mind, but you need to perform experiments to get data that will either agree with your hypothesis or disprove it so you can move on to the next stage or the next whatever solution. And that's what we're doing. In the context of INNOVAR, our data is the interviews, right? That's why these are so important and why Jay and everyone is really always hammering us to make sure we get all those interviews down. This is how we get the information that we're going to use to prove or disprove our hypothesis. It's just the scientific method. It's just the same as we're doing in our labs or you did back in class. This is what we're doing. And if you revise your hypothesis, that's good too. This is all progress. The point is to always be learning, and the interviews are how we learn in this. Okay, as Jay said, my day job is a bioengineering professor, and this is a message I try to tell my bioengineering students, but I'll share it with all of you all as well because I think it's relevant tonight too. Don't develop a malaria test that only works in air conditioning. Okay, and what I mean by that is it turns out that malaria kills a lot of people every year, serious problem. There's a lot of companies that develop rapid diagnostic tests like the one shown there on the slide for malaria, for diagnosing malaria. And they submit these to the World Health Organization. And what WHO finds is a significant fraction of these rapid diagnostic tests that worked in the labs where they were developed suddenly, surprisingly, don't work when they're actually used on the ground in the parts of the world where malaria is actually present. And why is that? Well, the malaria test was developed in an air-conditioned lab somewhere in North America or Europe or Asia or who knows what. And the parts of the world where malaria is a problem, if you look at a map, are right in the equatorial regions where that Anopheles mosquito is present, right? And so what characterizes those areas? High temperature, high humidity, right? And so it's not surprising in hindsight to realize that I can't develop something that works in air conditioning and then expect it to work in the parts of the world where it actually needs to be used. So there again, talking to these customers is how we get those insights, right? If I develop a test in my lab, but don't realize that the customers have these specific needs, these constraints, they might not have air conditioning, they might have this or that, right? I would say wasting my time developing something without learning about the specific constraints and needs of my customers, because the likelihood that what I create in my little air-conditioned lab at UCR will be useful on the ground is slim to none. And so finally, again, especially for the professors in the crowd, and grad students, use this experience in future grant proposals as well, right? Your interviews are preliminary data for that sort of thing, right? And so you can say, I'm proposing to do this, and not only do I think this is a good idea, but I actually interviewed 10 or 15 or 20 experts in this field, and 79% of them said this is a good idea, and I got this feedback from them. You get the idea, right? So your experience that you have in this, hopefully a company will come from this, but even if it doesn't, just the data that you're collecting as part of the INNOVAR program will hopefully be a useful preliminary results, we call it, when you're going after things like additional funding and stuff like that in the future. All right, and the second of my two slides here, general advice about how to do customer discovery and these interviews. A lot of this came from my collaboration on that Match Sample Corporation technology with Steve Sharp, but I've worked with so many of the entrepreneurs, and so this is all just sort of bits and pieces I've picked together that I've learned from other folks in the INNOVAR program. I suggest starting with something like, we're doing research for a project at UC Riverside. We're not selling anything, right? I think that's important when you're first contacting and talking to these people to know that, you're not a salesman, you're not selling something. And also it's nice to identify yourself and associate yourself with UCR. If you're a professor or a student at UCR, then you can use that, you can play that card. I'm a student, I'm doing this research project, and I'd love to learn more from you, right? That's a low effort, non-threatening introduction to someone. I'm not trying to sell something. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm a student or an academic or someone affiliated with UC Riverside, and I'm just here to learn. I think that's a good way to make a good first impression on these people. Start your questioning broad. Steve and I always liked asking the very first question, what's your biggest pain point? associated with your role that is the reason why I contacted you, right? Not not my back is hurting today or something like that, but in your role as a, I don't know, a purchasing person for a hospital that buys medical technology, what's your biggest pain point? And it's so crucial to start broad because I want to learn unfiltered thoughts from this person. This person's an expert in the field that I, an inventor, am aspiring entrepreneur, a field that I am aspiring to make an impact in that person's field. So this is a priceless opportunity for me to learn unfiltered information from that individual about what they really need, not what I think they need. I'm not the expert. They're the expert. I want to learn what they need unfiltered. So start that questioning broad. What you find is people like sharing this sort of thing. This is a functional MRI image from a study where these folks were interested in asking people to talk about themselves. Okay, just as I understand it, the study was they put someone in the MRI magnet and they said, tell us about yourself. And what they found was parts of the brain lit up that are associated with pleasure. Some of these are the same parts of the brain that are activated during sex and things that were considered to be very pleasurable for people. And so the take home message for this is that humans love talking about themselves. We love sharing our opinions about things. So use that to your advantage. Get that going, and you'll find that people are generally very happy to give their opinions about what their biggest pain points are. Don't lead the witness. It's so tempting for us. We've developed our, back to the hammer metaphor. I've developed my hammer, okay? I secretly think I have a really good solution that I've invented, but don't bring that up too early. Don't lead the witness. Let them provide that unfiltered take first. There's always time toward the end of the conversation that if you want to bring up the specifics of your hammer, whatever you've developed, then we can get into that later. But don't pollute the witness. Don't taint the witness by bringing up the what your specific solution, what your specific problem in mind is. Learn first. And so the point of doing that is obvious. You can learn about pain points that you never knew existed, right? There could be a whole other nail out there that you don't know about, and our only opportunity to discover that is to start broad with the person and learn from them first. Then we can narrow down into the particular problem that you're interested in later. Now, sometimes things go in a weird direction, like the person complaining about the back pain or whatever. If the conversation is going in a direction that is just not useful to you, that's okay. You can always steer it back on track and narrow down the questioning a little bit to get back on track. In doing this, for many times now, I've been consistently amazed by how friendly most people are. This is speaking as someone who considers himself kind of introverted, and it felt weird at first to be contacting people and being like, "Listen, can I talk to you for 15 or 30 minutes? This feels kind of strange." And I was 9 times out of 10 people. Sometimes it's hard to get through the email spam filter or whatever the case may be. But once you can make a connection with people, they are generally very friendly and willing to help. 9 times out of 10, there's always a curmudgeon out there. But if you're an introvert like me, don't let that stop you from trying to really engage with folks. A corollary of that, I'm amazed by how open people are in this process, even potential competition. I remember Steve and I talking to folks who ran companies that made substantially the same kind of product that I was interested in making as well. And yet they were still, saying very frank, honest insights, connecting us with their contacts, with experts in the field. It was really, really great. Maybe they didn't see me as a threat. I don't know. But I was grateful for all of that candid information, and I was surprised by how much of it there was. If a customer brings up something valuable or unexpected, it's okay to go off script and dig deeper. So a word about scripts. I think it's smart going into these interviews to have, 5 or 6 questions lined up, call it a script or whatever, that is just useful if there's a lull in the conversation. I can look down at my notes and I have another question teed up ready to go. But don't be afraid to go off script for a while if the conversation goes in an interesting direction. That's a really good opportunity. That's, again, how you'll find those nails that you didn't know existed, those problems that you weren't aware about. Now, later in the interview, if there's time, you can always then get specific, bring up your specific solution for feedback, and that's valuable too. There you're getting maybe more technical feedback, specific information about what you're proposing, and that's valuable information too. Really good interviewees that you speak to, remember them, keep in touch with them. They could become future advisors, future board members on your company, all kinds of things, right? You'll find a handful, that won't be everybody that you interview, but some people will be really enthusiastic about what you're doing and will be passionate about it. And my advice would be to keep in touch with those folks, because as this grows into a business, they're obviously going to be some of your biggest cheerleaders and could be really valuable resources down the road. And the final question, again, this is stolen from Steve. Is there anyone else we should be talking to to about this? So valuable, right? You're really leveraging the social network, right? Real often, more often than not, when we ask that, an individual will be like, well, yeah, come to think of it, you know who you should be talking to? You should be talking to so-and-so over at thus and such. And those are the kind of connections that you might not have even discovered otherwise. So always try to ask that final question is my advice. And so, to segue and introduce Sam here, most recently, last year, Sam and I went through the INNOVAR curriculum on a technology that we're developing called the Otter Sampler. And so there's Sam, picture of her, and we were working with and continue to work with Art Salyer, who's been a fantastic mentor about this project. And so I'll shut up and let Sam tell a little bit maybe about the Otter Sampler, and then she can share a few of the neat things that we observed in the process of doing the customer discovery for that project.
Great. Thanks, Will. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam. I'm an associate professor in environmental science, and I'll give like a super brief background of what Will and I worked on. There is a ton of arsenic in drinking water that is sourced from groundwater, and testing it is really difficult. And one of the biggest problems for testing is actually collecting the samples themselves. And so the technology that we worked on together is a tap water sampler. It's pretty straightforward. We have that little blue guy that is really cute. And then you fill a cup with tap water, and then it sucks the tap water up. And the beauty of it is it stores the sample inside the sampler. And then that whole thing can be taken to an analytical lab. So without getting like super deep into the technology and all that stuff, going back to the beauty of customer discovery, I really liked when Jay emphasized that what we're kind of looking for are kind of surprises, especially if we find customers or interested parties to have conversations with, and just kind of keep it super open, like Will was saying. One of the things that came up when we talked to our community-based organization collaborators was that they were like, oh, this is really awesome. It's super accessible. We really love it. And to top it off, can you actually make it into a full platform of services? And so, in other words, they didn't just want the tap water sampler, and they're like, can you actually get the data, process it for us, interpret it, and make like little zines, and like have this whole thing be an entire, like framework. And that was super cool because we didn't design it that way. And so the customer discovery process or interview in that case wasn't just like, hey, what do you, like, what do you think about water? It was like, it went all the way to, oh, not only is this great, but here are some extra ideas. And so they kind of became thought partners, which was really cool and unexpected. And backing up a bit, in general, we just got so much interest. Like I was just talking to Will before this call. We went into this being like, all right, so it's a tap water sampler. Cool. And then we kind of expanded to talking to like water agencies and consultants that do like groundwater sampling, not necessarily for tap water testing, but just repeat testing. And so there's all these other realms and like professions and industries that were also interested in the fundamental way that this technology worked that we totally were not expecting either. So again, like what Will was saying, a big part of it is because I think the two, especially because I'm the opposite of Will, I am a total amateur at all this business stuff. So I went in and was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna think this is useful, and I was like, I am more than open to hearing what people think. We didn't go in there and be like, hey, this is a really cool toy. You need it. I was on the opposite end, and I was like, do you think this is like relevant? And just talk about it, And so that, I think, having that attitude helped people feel like they could kind of just be super open. Like Will said, the conversation isn't biased toward anything because you're not pitching something. So I think having that attitude is super important to having like really genuine responses. And then just last point that was surprising. was that part of what we wanted to do was actually make the technology and test it in the community and have people who were living with water sources that are contaminated with arsenic really use the sampler. And the coolest part of that process, and we had focus groups with it, was that just having the technology in their home and made people think about water more. And that part was also just like super surprising. That was part of our interview process, just talking to community members who just live in these really um, like uh, disadvantaged areas that are super underserved, and just getting their thoughts on water in general. And that led us to realize like, oh yeah, we definitely should go into this whole like framework platform kind of service and outreach, as a giant package, because the even just using the sampler became this like empowering action of like, okay, I'm collecting the sample. I own the sample and I own the data when it comes to me. And that was all, feedback even before we deployed the samplers. These are just us talking to people who lived in areas that had poor water quality. So at the end of the day, the point is our team worked out really well because I think we're really adamant in having conversations that are super open, and just kind of being like a friendly yet non like harsh selling your stuff kind of attitude, and that made the conversation, every conversation, really fascinating and fruitful.
Mhm.
That's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam. I've got a question and a comment before we let you go, though, for either Sam or Will. The first is that the question is tonight's class, we're talking about markets and market size. I'm guessing that water quality is a tremendously huge market, and it's a very important market because we're made up of water. And if you don't have good water, it's a huge problem. How did you go about uh, measuring the market and the size of the market? And do you think that was an important part of your journey?
Yeah, it's I'll be honest, that was something we struggled with because it was a difficult thing to measure, and some teams might find this sort of thing too. Who exactly our customer was sort of evolved over the course of this too. And so yeah, we started out focusing on these community service organizations, NGOs, nonprofits often. These are organizations that would be purchasing these units and then they would help and deploy them to the residents in the communities they serve. And these nonprofits, obviously, by kind of by definition, as the name implies, they're not swimming in a lot of excess cash usually, right? And so I think to try to answer that question early on, we struggled to have an answer with that. But then trying to answer it gave us the opportunity to sort of zoom out and look at other business opportunities. And so I think the number is, Sam, correct me, 10 or 15% of residents, it's somewhere in that ballpark, of the whole country rely on well water, right? And so it's not just these disadvantaged communities in the Eastern Coachella Valley that we're focusing on for more philanthropic reasons. It's also, wealthy ranch houses in the Rockies or whoever what, right? People living off the grid who could afford to pay for a service, right? And so a lot of the calculations we did, I think, were focusing on that more lucrative quote market. And so hopefully by pursuing two revenue streams like that, we're able to sell a product to a more affluent consumer stream where they're still getting useful information out of it, and then the income from that can subsidize the more at cost sales to the community organizations. So I didn't that wasn't a specific answer to your question, Jay, but I think in trying to assess the size of the market, it opened up our eyes to sort of reevaluate who our market and who our customer was.
Well, that's an excellent answer. It's difficult to identify, and you sort of have the Tom's shoes model, which is for every pair of Tom's shoes that they sell, they give a pair of shoes to someone else, and
Right.
do something like that with drinking water. And then the comment I wanted to make was last time I looked, this is all UC Riverside, and all of you participants are studying in this class. So even if you are a community member, you are part of a UC Riverside program, and you can say that when you're reaching out. So you don't have to say you're not part of a study or anything like that. You're part of UC Riverside, and you're a student who's looking for advice. And goes without saying, when you're looking for advice, you get a different response than when you're looking to sell somebody something. And so everyone knows that, especially the person who's being pitched. So when they're seen as someone who gets to talk about what they do, the humdrum becomes interesting. And when you're trying to pull money out of their pocket, well, you're going to need to do that for your business, but none of you are there in this class to sell. So, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Will, thanks again for contributing. Francis, you've got your hand up, and then
Yeah.
we're on to introducing John.
Well, thank you, Will and Sam. Thank you. One thing that I just wanted to mention, thank you for letting us use your other sampler slides as an example for this program. I really appreciate it. Now, everybody is going to be very well versed and familiarized with other sampler, thanks to you. Thank you for letting us use this as an example of how you growth and learn from customer discovery. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. And hey, best of luck for, oh, I see Steve's got a hand up too.
I was going to make one comment. Will is better at this than I am, and that is being very gracious toward the person that gives you their time interviewing. And one of the things he'd always do when we were about 20 minutes in the interview, he'd say, "How's your time? We asked for 20 minutes. We're about 20 minutes. Are you still okay? And is it okay if I ask another question or two?" People invariably say yes. But I think it's really important to be gracious and show them that they're doing you a favor by letting you have access to them. And Will is especially good at being respectful of their time, which I think makes them even more inclined to offer even more time and answer more questions than otherwise.
I think I learned that from you, Steve, actually.
I doubt it, but
I don't know.
some bad habits from me for rubbing out that one, though.
That goes without saying too. But
All right. Well, it's definitely a mutual admiration society. So thank you again. And you're welcome to stick around for the next hour and a half, or you can go back and make $1 million in your business. So it's up to you. Next
Thank
up
you.
on our calendar
thank you all.
is John Shearer, who's one of the mentors and EIRs here in the Office of Technology Partnerships at UCR. And John is a serial entrepreneur. He has a specialty in cybersecurity, and a long time ago was AI and machine learning. And he's got especially in biosignature screening, startup in that. And he's also a business school professor of entrepreneurship at Pepperdine University, where he helped really grow that program. We're very fortunate to have him be part of UC Riverside now. And John, take it away.
Great, thanks. Yeah, this is a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed Will and Sam's presentation. It sounds like a blues band. I like that name, Will and Sam. The what I'm going to get into is a little bit about trying to define the market size, and this is a really hard exercise because if you get the hypothesis wrong and the customer wrong, you can't do the market size. So it's something to really think about, and so do a lot of iterations during the discovery, because that's when you can decide on, well, wait a second, my hypothesis is wrong, or I got to pivot, and now I can hone in on, okay, who is the economic buyer? And when I talk about the market, I'm talking about where the money changes hands, because many times it could be that the user is not the economic buyer. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is make sure that that your market there's a sufficient number, and there's a large enough of amount of potential users and customers. If it's not large enough, it may be that, well, you're solving the wrong problem, or you should change and look for a market that's bigger or better, unless you want to be a lifestyle business, which is fine. And another thing to look for is look at the potential and predictable growth in users and numbers. Like, is it a growing market? It's rare that you want to enter a market that's collapsing. There are instances where that makes sense, a lot of times on the financial side. But just think about, look for markets, not only it's a big market today, is it going to be a big market tomorrow? And is there a way, and this is the tough part, is the market could be there, it could be addressable, it could be serviceable, but can you get to them? And so that's how, can you reach those potential users? And there's two different types of markets to look at, or what doing your market calculus and market analysis. One is it's a top down, and this is where, unlike your customer discovery, which is primary research, that's you're getting it directly from the source. If you're entering a market that already exists, you have to look at, or you can look at a lot of already existing information that is there. And it's getting a lot easier to do, by the way, with the AI and things, and I'll bring it up at the end. But this is primarily secondary research that is augmented by your primary, looking at a top-down approach, and it's the data that backs up the assumption. Make sure that those assumptions that you're finding when you're doing the top-down, it's you can work with actual verifiable data. The other markets are where it's a bottom up, and that's where it's like, okay, I have this specific solution, and it's going to go after so many people, and you're kind of building it up. And in some case, the bottom up is also if you're creating a new market, a problem, it's a new problem and no solutions exist. That's where you take the bottom up. So to break it into three simple categories, one is the total available market, and that could be by geography, it could be global, it could be your total available market might be a county, if you're looking for a small type of business. And then there's the serviceable available market. That's what's reachable by your ability to get there. What's your sales channel? Could be direct, it could be indirect, it could be online, you could have a partnership arrangement, you could be a value-added reseller. There's all sorts of things, but it's basically you have to get to that available market, and do you have the resources and the systems in place to get there? The final is more like when you're getting into the market, what's of that serviceable market, what's obtainable? Meaning, and sometimes it's obtainable just in a period of time. So this is not a static, none of these are static numbers. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like, well, some of these might be growing markets. And so this is what it is today. But this is a way that you're going to be able to articulate internally and then many times externally, just how big is the opportunity that you're going to go after? Can you get there? What it's going to cost to get there? And do you have the support and the resources to do it? And this is a lot of times investors are really interested in this because this is showing them or validating that the market exists, but they're also going to compare and they're going to drill into this and say, you know what? I don't know where they got this information because it's not even close to what reality is. So you got to be really careful that these are believable, reputable, and you can back up these numbers because you'll get asked a lot on this, especially if you're the kind of business that has to go after external funding to grow. Some examples are, coffee shop chains. It's a huge market. And so if you're going up against the Starbucks and so on a global market, you'll know it's like, hey, that's a gigantic market. But then, what can I really go after? Maybe it's the US might just be this number, the 625. It's still a big number in millions. But then I'm a local, or I might have just a few cities, like big urban areas, geographic areas that I know because of my channels, because of my storefronts, because of however I'm going to sell, that's really what's achievable is, 6 million out of what at the top number is 62 billion. So think of like the big picture, and the big picture one is like, 5 years out or whatever, that's actually what you could grow to if all the things fall into place. It could be by acquisition. It could be by the market's growing so fast. And now the actual number, in 5 years from now, that TAM might be 150 billion just because of the market that you're entering. Okay? So this is all fluid information, but you have to put a stake in the ground that you can justify and back up. Other examples that are the big numbers, hotel booking apps. How many are there? They're all over the place. But guess how much money they cause to generate, especially if you're getting a share of the revenue. If you're the concierge, specific booking app, that's like a concierge service, that I'm going after the high-end customer, and my SOM's 2 billion. There's real businesses behind these types of numbers. And in this class, in INNOVAR, there's such a, there's such a spectrum of types of businesses. So I'm throwing a couple up here just to give you ideas on how you're going to have to approach figuring out what your market sizing is, depending on the type of business and timeline and market conditions. So it depending whether it's a coffee shop, it's a booking app, or other things. And so I'm going to give you this real quick, just an example that why it's a this market using secondary research is so much easier and so more cost effective now, just in the last few years. So as an example, I just went into Perplexity using their Comet query system, and I just put in these words. And this is what I did. What is the total available market, serviceable available market, and serviceable obtainable market for consumer health monitoring wearable devices? And in less than a minute, it popped up amazing amount of information that you can validate. Because the one thing, this isn't really a commercial Perplexity, but one of the things I like is because underneath all of these numbers are all the sources and the references. And that's the believability thing. Because and like if you're raising money, the analysts and things at a VC or it's family office, whatever, they're going to be using the same tools, and they're going to cross-check, is this a real number? And these are the numbers that just popped up. And in this example, it's the wearable market, which is not just healthcare type market. It was huge. It was 80 billion. But the important thing is, and I think everyone would understand, that wearables is a growing, and this is an extremely fast growing market. You're going like in 5 years. These are the 2025 projections, going from 80 billion to 186 billion in 5 years. And these are from reputable market analyst reports, which if you dig in, and that's when the sources you'd want to have the ones you pick out to back it up. But the healthcare wearables just in the U.S. is already at 30 billion. And then the wearables, assuming that you have the channel and the ability to get there, is about 5 billion. And just that information, that 5 billion is if you're already a market player. And the ones that are out there, you've got the Samsungs, you got the the Apple devices and the Oura rings and things like that. So it's kind of an established market. So there's some real numbers that these are coming out of. But my point here is really leverage these new tools to do the secondary research, especially the ones that have references that you can quote, because you're going to want to be able to quote real numbers from reputable research reports in these slides. And so kind of looking at this again, how do you get this information? It's out there. And fortunately at UCR, you have a lot of access to some very sophisticated research tools and papers and so on. So you can get some things, so you don't have to spend money to get what was validated information. And actually, one thing I did find out from using Perplexity and one of the other new ones is like some of the reports that I couldn't get, I thought I was going to have to pay for, the snippets of information that are available that you can reference already are there. Another thing to do is if you're entering an existing market, do a lot of research almost as if you are your competitor. I'd recommend actually pretending you're them, use all of their online information, and then act as if you're doing their internal market research in your queries, and you'll get some amazing information because it's looking deeper into your competitors' information as a and the reason I bring that up is if you're going to enter a market, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to convince the existing buyers to buy yours instead of theirs. And how are you going to get there? And what's that differentiator going to be? Which is not so much on the, you can sell, apples and apples, but if there's a way that you can, identify yours as better in some way and potentially just in the channel, that's where you can dig out that information. When you're doing for new markets, that's a little trickier because you're kind of starting with, hey, I have this new thing that people didn't even know they had the problem, but I know they're going to know that it's going to occur. And it's like way back, as an example, way back when it's this, kind of, I don't know whether it's true or not, but when they were first trying to market cars, it's like the investors would say, well, why would I want to invest in that? Because I have a perfectly good horse, right? Well, that's the type of thing that's happening when you're creating a new market. It's a new offering that solves a problem that's never been solved that way before. So you have to work from the bottom up and have a little bit different types of evidence to support your information. One of the things don't ever do. Oh, if I just get 5% of the market, it's like, yeah, how are you going to get that? Don't use percentages of what's possible. You can use percentages as an aspiration, but the way you get to that percentage is based on some channel or some sales processes and techniques that you have that can justify how you get to that number. But don't start with a number as your addressable market. And that's the main thing. So that's a quick run through on a very complex thing, but I will back it up. It's like if you've got if your hypothesis and your customer, if you haven't figured that out, it's really hard to even start the exercise of doing the market share, the size of the market. With one exception or there's several, but if you go through the exercise, you may find out that, what, the total market just isn't big enough to keep going with that problem, solving that problem. It's just not worth it. So that's I don't know how long it took me to go, but it's about 15, 20 minutes of a very complex problem, but it takes a lot of work.
Thank you, John. You did an excellent job. And I think the students now, along with the information that we've put into Basecamp, are much better prepared than they were before you spoke to create this most difficult slide. And like all the slides that we're going to put together, these are working documents, not, etched in stone. So you're going to keep learning more about your market and other possibilities, and it'll be something that evolves over time. But for this class, if you can't figure out where there's a market, then it's a big learning. And one of the learnings is to fail fast. And so ideally you can either find that you're in a huge market or pivot to one that is successful, or come up with a new plan, Stan. So John, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Your timing was perfect because we wanted to end a little bit before 6 so that Steve and Art could have 15 or 20 minutes to continue last week's class, which is to do an interview, a practice sample interview. And if you don't know about Art's Hollywood career, you're about to find out, and Steve can keep up with him. So two of our favorite mentors are going to be giving you some real live interviewing, and I will interrupt on occasion if I feel like it to make a point. And but other than that, they're on their own. So Steve, you've met Art, you've met, and so take it away.
Thanks, Jay. So I'm going to be the interviewer, and Art's going to be a beekeeper. We're going to be using my client's technology as our framework. It's so Shemima, don't take it personally. It's going to have nothing to do with what we're doing with you. We're just going to show you some do's and don'ts of interviewing. So I'm going to start.
The
Go ahead.
multi-speaker view in your Zoom would be a good one, because then you can see Art and you, Steve, live at the top of the screen.
Okay.
It says views as multi-speaker. Right now it's you and John. But
Okay.
start speaking, I think John will fade away.
Okay. Very good. So Art, are you ready?
I was born ready, Steve.
Okay. So, hey, Art, it's really nice to meet you. Man, you are really, really hard to get a hold of. I think I sent like 8 or 9 emails and called a couple times and so on, but man, it was tough to get a hold of you. But I'm glad that you found the time today. And I know you're a busy guy and I am too. So appreciate you taking some time today. But boy, it was tough to get a hold of you.
Well, I'm busy. This is a busy time of year in beekeeping business. This is our packaging and resetting the industry for the bees for next year. So, what do you want?
Yeah, well, hey, by the way, wouldn't that you've been following the World Series? They're at those Dodgers. It's fantastic. They're gonna be playing on Friday. Isn't that
You know,
great? I'm sure,
Steve, I only got a limited amount of time here. So,
but you got to be a doc.
whatever you're selling me, tell me what it is so I can decide.
Well, but you live in Southern Cal. I can't believe you don't love the Dodgers. I mean, you're in Southern California. But anyway, let's keep going. I mean, listen, we got this great product, and I'm sure you've got lots of problems with bees and your hives dying and getting diseases and all kinds of stuff like that. And so we've got this really, really slick technology that's fantastic.
Wait, stop. What did he do wrong, class?
Discounted his time at the very beginning of it. It was hard to get a hold of you. Why couldn't you answer your emails?
He started
And
a
then-
sales pitch.
Yeah. Where's the bonding and report? The bonding report was a failure, and then he's immediately going to tick off the interviewee. This is not an information gathering interview. Okay. Yet.
Okay, so we'll reboot this now, and we'll try to go at it the right way and see if you can see a difference.
Good luck.
Hey, Mr. Salyer, it's great to meet you. I appreciate you taking the time today. As I think I mentioned to you in our introduction, I'm with UC Riverside. I'm a student there.
Okay.
And we're just trying to learn more about the market you're in. And we know you're an expert. You have a lot of years of experience here. So it's just terrific that you're given some time, because I'm really eager to learn from you and learn about your experiences in beekeeping.
Always happy to help that great agricultural school, UCR. How can I
Thank
help
you.
you today?
Hey, and I've done a little bit of homework on this. We've talked to a few people, but I'm sure that you face a lot of challenges in beekeeping. What's one of the biggest issues, or what are the things that you really have to wrestle with most to run your business and keep your business in good shape?
I think it's taking care of the bees, because bees are susceptible to a lot of different diseases. So it's staying in front of the diseases and the all the problems of keeping bees healthy is sort of what I worry about the most here.
Are there any particular areas that are most problematic, or where you have the most challenges, or where maybe current methods just don't work that well?
Well, I'll tell you, this beta Z virus that seems to be erupting everywhere. I haven't seen anything that's really dealing with that without these side effects that affect that stuff. And I'm an organic farmer, so I don't like putting these heavy duty things. So I'm sort of at a loss here with how to control this virus using natural means.
Do you have any colleagues or others that have done things that have come up with good solutions, or what do you do to address this issue? I mean, you just have to kind of just hope that it doesn't happen, or are there methods you're able to use there?
Well, what we end up doing is sacrificing the hives. So when we do detect it, if we can detect it soon enough, which is another problem, detection of this virus, we take the hive, separate it from the rest of them, and we destroy the hive and as many bees as we can to keep it under control.
Wow, what kind of losses? I mean, what's typical that what percentage of your hives might you lose that way, just in an average year?
Well, last year, this particular virus killed about 10% of our hives, and
Wow.
this year it's accelerating to maybe as high as 15%.
Wow. you mentioned, if you mentioned analytics, some of the things that you wish you had. If you could have something that was like a perfect solution for you that addressed these issues and was user friendly, so what would that look like? What would a perfect solution look like for you to address this issue?
Well, we've had a couple of people approach us with solutions, but they all seem to require testing and grabbing bees, which are difficult, and then shipping bees off to testing facilities. What I'd like to be able to do is have my iPhone scream at me that this virus was attacking a set of hives in a certain location so that I could react as fast as possible. That would be the perfect solution for me.
Is there other information that might be helpful to you along with, hey, this infestation is looming or it could be a problem? Anything else you'd want to know from that if you had an ideal solution?
Well, the important thing is how do we prevent it and what kind of prophylactic protection could we give bees? That's one, but also will that prophylactic protection be of an organic nature so that we continue to um, keep our organic business going?
Huh. In talking to a couple, I've heard, sometimes the beekeepers make money from honey production. They also make money from putting their bees out in fields to pollinate, like olive branches and so on. Do you have both of those sides of your business? Do both of those matter to you, or is one of them more important to you than the other in terms of your business model?
Well, producing product, which is what we call the honey itself, is where the money is. Putting hives out for pollination is sort of my vacation money. That's what I
Okay.
use to go on vacations, or it's my kind of mad money. But you can't make a living as a pollinator. Some people have tried and not worried about the honey, but you really can't make a living pollinating. I think that's enough, Steve.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to have one more. If you had that perfect solution, who would you want to buy it from? What kind of person or what kind of role would sell you stuff like that? Who do you go to for solutions like that?
Well, since I pay all this money in tax dollars, I'd really like the University of California to quit working on all of these deep tech bullshit projects, and I'd like them to work more on to help the farmers.
Yeah.
What we need is more solutions from the universities,
Yeah.
less fine arts, less liberal studies. What I need is solutions for agricultural problems from the university.
That's,
Well,
that's good.
thank you for taking the time today. I appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness. Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say that's hitting too close to home, Mr. Bee Farmer, but this was an excellent way of digging for pain and digging deeper for pain. And it's really for all the teams, this is how you're going to find out whether you've got a solution or if you have identified the problem. You get to, they get to tell you what their problem is. You get to decide what your solution is going to be. And if there's a match, that's great. So Art can say, take liberal arts dollars and put them into, a fund for bees. And that's probably not what's going to happen.
Well,
But
there's a couple of things that Steve didn't do, which I would add. I mean, he's always a good interviewer, but first is you always confirm how much time do you have to give me today. You always want to make sure that's true. The second thing, there's always really two really good questions. Is there any question? I think Steve may have asked this, but is there anything else, or tell me a question I didn't ask, or that. And thirdly, which is really important, who else can I talk to? Who else? Is there somebody else I could talk to? Is there another beekeeper or bee company? And then it's like right after that, like just immediate, like, well, could you introduce me to that person?
Yeah.
So it just allows you should always try to get one more contact, even if it's within the same company. Who else in the company do you think would be really good for me to talk to? Should never leave an interview without at least one new contact, and if possible, like an invitation, a warm invitation. Steve would have asked those, we just got cut off. The other one that we got into, and I did it purposely, is you want to really be careful of getting into political things, those kind of opinions. The best thing is what Steve did is just listen, not a lot, and try to get off that subject really fast, because you'll run into these things every once in a while, particularly if you're advertising yourself as a student or a representative of that. You get into play. It's better just say, well, can we get back to I'd like to get back to these bees, and then get real back to it and try to get away from that, because you'll run into those from time to time. At least I have. It's my answer, Jay.
Anyone else who is a participant that would like to comment on what they just observed or ask a question? A comment would be something to the effect of, this has been useful and helpful in terms of how I'm going to be conducting my interviews, or question would be like, how do you know how to ask these sorts of questions? And any comments from the participants? All right. Well, while you're thinking about raising your hand, let me say one quick thing.
Krista has a question. It looks for a comment.
Okay, Krista, you take over.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for the role play. It gives us all an example of how to get into our character. But yeah, when you ask the what else, or what haven't I asked, or who else should I be talking to, that's really when when my customer interview said, well, what are you doing? So that was kind of too vague of a question before then I had to tell them my tech.
And it's okay if you've gone through if you've gotten all the questions answered you really wanted to in your script, and you've got a little bit of time, and the person's still willing to give you more time. Art's right. You always want to check in and say, how much time do we have? And as Will mentioned earlier, be respectful and say, are we okay if I ask another question or two? If it's toward the end and you've already gotten through your entire arsenal and you haven't biased any of the information so far, you can say, could I give you like a 10-second thumbnail of what we're thinking about? You can share that, and then the question, given that, is there something else I should have asked you, or is there anything else you'd like to comment upon now that I've kind of characterized what we have in mind? That's a great time to ask that question, but it's at the end after you've already gotten all the other information you're seeking. Because again, it's not a sales pitch.
I did that, and then she gave me extra input that I
Perfect.
needed to be considering. Yeah.
That works great, because those are some of the gems that your regular questioner may not get at. So but you do it at the end if they'll allow you a little bit more time.
I always try to, the very best thing you can do to disarm is, because everybody thinks you're coming in to sell something. There's nobody that's talking to you that doesn't think you're trying to sell something. So I always use the card right away. I'm on a project from the University of California, Riverside. We're doing some discovery on some of the issues in this particular field. And I know it's really hard, because it's really difficult for you not to jump in and say, oh, I got this great thing and I want to tell you about it. But the moment you start talking about the features of your product or something about your business, if you're really, really lucky, somebody says, oh, that's pretty interesting. Most of the time, the door just closes. They're just going, oh yeah, this was, in fact, they get pissed off because they say, you snuck in here to get a sales call in, because slimy salespeople do that. John taught me how to do that. John Weiss, how to get in to see customers doing that. I'm just teasing, John. But so we're here. I'm trying to understand your business, and the way I get into the technologies, I always say, we've got several concepts we're working on at the university, or we're working on with several clients, or whatever you want to say. We're working on things, but really what we're trying to understand is some of the issues. And then if you really get forced into a corner, then you can throw out just a tiny bit. Like, we're talking about measuring, being able to detect bee viruses. We're trying to understand that a little bit, but you just throw out just a tiny bit and you stay on that. We're doing research, and it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult, because you're going to want to talk about your technology, especially if they're playing back to you exactly what your technology is going to do. Well, we can fix that. You got to stay away from that and just say, man, what I got here is a customer. So I'll mark that, because when I get this all worked out, when I'm ready to do it, not only do I have a customer, but I have somebody that already knows me. That's going to take my call next time. Said, hey, remember we were talking about that? I'd like to talk to you about some of the technology ideas we have to fix that. Man, you've got an open door then. Honest open door.
To reinforce that point, that it's not a sales call. If you're spending more than 20% of the time yourself talking or more, that's not good. The person being interviewed should be spending the lion's share of the time speaking. Hopefully 75 to
Really
80%
good,
or more of the
Steve.
time that you allocate should be them telling you about things, not
Yeah,
you.
that's a really good one, Steve. That's a really quick internal measure. Are they doing all the talking or are you doing all the talking?
I had one question.
Okay.
I wasn't sure the level of like back and forth to do because at one point they were bringing things up that I wanted to connect with, and so but I didn't want to pull them off course, you know. So I was talking to the associate provost, and they were talking about initiatives that they had done and strategies that they had used. And I was like, oh, you know, that's actually what I framed my grant around on the postdoc that I'm on currently. It's not what the project's on that we're talking about, but that's, you know, my strategies. And I felt like it derailed us a little bit, but then we did go down a route a little bit more that I was curious about, and it went deeper into his strategies. But I was worried I had kind of derailed the original conversation, so I wasn't sure how much within the actual interview I should back and forth or hold off and wait
If,
until the end.
if somebody's sharing something that still could be relevant to what you have in mind, or at least the envisioned solution, then it's okay to let them go. Don't be such a slave to your script that you have to get them back on it. If what they're saying is useful and helpful, even if it's even if it's very different than what you expect them to talk about, if it's relevant. If it's not relevant, as Art pointed out, you just say, "Listen, you said something earlier about X. Could we revisit that?" And you kind of steer them back gently that way, referencing something they said earlier, so that you're not just forcing them down a path. You mentioned this about X, and that I thought that was interesting. Could we develop that a little bit more? Could you elaborate on that just a bit more to kind of steer them back toward what's relevant to what you have in mind?
The other thing to do is I always just say, let them talk for a little bit, kind of see where this is going, you know, because you never know where all of a sudden they say, yeah, but if I just had this, you know, and just let it go for a little bit, be a little patient with it. You can always say, you know, I've taken 20 minutes of your time, but I really, really would like to come back and revisit some of these things. Do you think I could set up another time? And usually they'll say, yeah, I got another thing to go to, or let's just stay. That just opens you up to another meeting, you know, another conversation on this stuff. But usually I just let them go for a little bit. Just let it go. Because if you interrupt them and they're talking about themselves or they're talking about something, and you kind of try to cut them off, it just says, well, you know, and that's it. So just again,
I guess
you're gonna get A, B's, and C's on these interviews. Some of them are going to be dynamite, some of them are going to be just okay, and some of them are just going to be blowouts. And
I
you
guess
just sort of have to accept that.
I wasn't sure if interrupting and connecting to, because he was talking about the challenges of getting people to adhere to his vision and the strategy he puts out there. And I was like, oh, actually, I use those strategies in my grant. So I wasn't sure if that's like a good strategy to build rapport, is to be like, is
It's
to
okay.
connect, like to interrupt them in that
Okay.
way, or if I should really hold
Just
off.
it's okay. Again, the best you can do is to be quiet. Even if it goes in weird directions, because you never know where it's going to go, you know. And if they're talking and they're sharing things and they're opening things, that means they're building trust with you and confidence with you. And I just soon let somebody keep going because most likely there's going to be some value at the end of it. Every once in a while, it's a waste. We're going to get some of those, but most of the time, you know, at the worst situation is you're building rapport and you're building respect and trust, and you can cultivate that at a later. I would like to, you know, there's really interesting things. Wondering if I could call you back in a couple of days and talk a little bit more about a couple of these things when you have some more time, and then you can come back and at that interview you can push away all this preliminary stuff and just say, hey, you know, what I really want to talk about, really want your insights on is this, and this, because you've kind of built the relationship, so to speak, and you can get down into some of the more meaty parts of the discussion you're looking for. So just be patient.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? This was really a good
One,
question.
one other quick thing, just again to remind, I'm sorry, Jay, and I'll be quiet, but Steve says this to me all the time, and it's really good. If you can have two people on the interview there, and one person that's predominantly taking notes, and one person that's focused on the conversation, even if you hand it off, it really makes a difference because you can really stay engaged and you don't have to worry about taking notes, and somebody else can be sort of jotting things down as you go along. People don't like to be recorded, especially business guys. But if you can just sort of have somebody else there, another team member, to sort of start taking notes or writing them down, that's really, really effective. The last thing is, the moment you finish the interview, like within 5 minutes, stop what you're doing, wherever you are, sit in the car if it is, or sit on your computer and write down, what did we learn today? What are the 5 or 6 key takeaways? Because in 10 minutes, you'll forget something. What is the essence of this conversation? What are the key things that we learned? And if you got somebody else, say, let's just talk about it. Well, this, and this. And write those down really fast right after you get out of them, because the further you're away, you're thinking about other things, you'll start forgetting those things. It's really important right after the interview to have that sort of a personal debrief on what you learned. And then at the bottom of the page, can we go and get more from this person, just sort of put them on the list. Yeah, we probably ought to go back later on and get more from this person. Thanks. Sorry to take up the time, Jay.
No, we're doing good. The more conversation we have, the better. So this is all great. Hopefully you're all now much more confident. As you'll find out, just a month from now, you'll all be much more confident in your interviewing skills, and you'll be able to teach the same things that we're describing now. It's really amazing how much 10 or 15 interviews will get you in terms of your knowledge and comfort doing it. And actually, you're already pretty comfortable doing it. We had over 50 interviews done by this group in the past week, and that's pretty amazing. And I would say it's on track to possibly be a record for an INNOVAR group, partly because it's a very big group, but also because you're getting a lot of interviews right away. And so
it's really important, if you're struggling with interviews, or you don't feel you're getting productive, or you're getting frustrated, man, that's the time to call your mentor and just lean on them to say, look, I'm not getting anything out of this, or I'm not making progress. Because we've had mentors sit in on interviews before. Sometimes they will, or I'm just not getting anywhere on this. That's exactly what a mentor is there for, is to say, okay, let's go through your script. Let's go through what you're asking. And because all the mentors here have been through this thousands of times, it's just over and over again, both in our own businesses as well as in huge INNOVAR classes, national classes, and all that stuff. So we've really been through it a lot. It's just experience. And all of that. So lean on your mentor if you just don't feel you're making progress. And that goes for any part of it. If you don't understand something, or anytime you're feeling frustrated or discouraged, call your mentor and set up a time and say, I'm not feeling good about this. That's what they're there for. And we love those calls, by the way. We really do, because that's when we could really help.
Okay, are we ready to switch gears, everybody? Did everyone write down which room they're going into, or do we want to put that slide back up again? Because I think it's time for us to switch now to the breakout sessions. And each team will have 3 minutes to present, followed by 4 minutes of mentor commentary. We don't want you to spend 7 minutes presenting and getting no minutes of commentary. So whoever's monitoring the room, if they're going over 3 minutes, please make an executive decision to have them wrap it up so we can move into the question and answer period. But I do believe we have time for every group to, each team and every group to have 7 minutes, even though we're starting a little bit late, because we had a lot to cover today. And so thank you all for bearing with us. And Francis, how's this going to work? Are you sending them there or giving them an invitation, or do we have to?
I am opening the breakout rooms now, so they will be directly sent to the breakout rooms.